There's a book by A.L. Basham. It's called as The Wonder That India Was. The Wonder That India Was by A.L. Basham. So it gives you a social, economic, cultural history of India and what India has been and how India has evolved over a period of time. India was considered as a very rich nation in the older times. Even before the Britishers came, India was considered rich. And what we believe now, and if we are to read the economic history of those periods, 1700s, 1800s, and the 1900s, we have very good evidences of British policies making India a poorer nation. So there is a whole lot of British exploitative policies. And this is from something that the economic survey has given. So economic survey says in the year 1700, the India's percentage of global GDP production was something like 24.4%. That is, India produced a quarter of the world's production. Okay? A quarter of world's production happened in India. Come 120 years later, it actually reduced to around 16%. So what happened during this period? So this is the time where the Britishers starts coming into India. They starts getting a foothold over in the affairs of the India. Okay. So when does Aurangzeb die? 1707. Okay. This is a landmark here because the death of Aurangzeb meant the death of the Mughal dynasty. They had some rulers after that, this Bahadur Shah, Shah Zafar, all this type of rulers, but they were never strong enough anywhere compared to the greats of Aurangzeb, Akbar and all. So once Aurangzeb died, the British started having a stronghold of India, and that was very well evident in the decline of our production. Come 15 years down the line, it comes even further. And this is also the period, the 1700 to 1820 is the period when you had the Battle of Plassey. You had the Battle of Buxar in 1757 and 1764. And after that, they start getting the revenue rights of Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, and they start controlling your economy. Come 1857, you had the first war of independence. And as a result of it, the British crown directly started taking over the affairs of the Indian nation. So throughout this time period, you see Britishers increasing their control over the Indian economy and a correlated decrease in India's share of the global production. So a nation which was producing a quarter of the world's production, 250 years down the line was producing just 4% of the production. So what happened? See, the resources did not change largely. We had the same amount of resources. Then what happened? It was the way the Britishers structured the Indian economy. We said about the different economic systems, a market economy, mixed economy, planned economy. Which system do you think existed in India during this period, the 1700 to 1950? No system. It was a system they put in something as a result of which they could keep on extracting as much. In modern India, you'll study something called as drain of wealth. So the basic function of Britain was to make sure India was providing them wealth. That was the whole fundamental principle to that. So what was the objective of the British rule in India? Was it to make sure that the Indians was well off? That was never an objective. So you have UK, you have India. So during these periods that we are speaking about, the 1700s, what's happening in UK? Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution was just a process where we started this mass scale production. The production which was actually much lower on a household scale, which is in lower quantities, now you started producing in factories in a large scale. So this was possible for Britain because they had a whole lot of conducive environment and there was a lot of inventions and discoveries happening around this period. The ginning machine, the steam engine, all these type of things. And in which type of sector or which type of product did the Industrial Revolution start? So the Industrial Revolution actually began in the textile industries. You must have heard about places like Lancaster, Liverpool. Football fans would definitely know. Manchester. All these were places of great production for the industries. The Lancaster, Liverpool, Manchester, all these places where there was large amount of the factories coming up. So what is a raw material for these factories? They need cotton, silk, all these type of things. So the idea of an industrial revolution in UK was not just to produce the amount of goods for the needs of UK people. Because industrial revolution has the potential of massively increasing your production. So when you massively increase your production and you have a potential of making profit out of that, what do you try to do? You try to sell it to as much as places as possible. You try to expand your markets, right? When you have some profitable work, what do? You try to scale it up. You try to expand it to everywhere. So the local raw materials that was coming from UK was not enough for these factories to survive. So they went on the hunt for raw materials, and India was a victim of the hunt for raw materials. So India had cotton, India had jute, India had silk, all these things which were conducive for as raw materials for these industries. So they started taking raw materials from India to abroad. Okay. Now, what did they started to do? They started producing textiles out of it. They started selling it in UK. They started selling it in different parts of the world. And they also started selling it to India. So as a result of British policies, India became a supplier of raw materials and a buyer of finished goods. Is there anything bad about this? There is a problem with this. The problem is raw materials are cheaper than the finished goods. You are exporting something worth 10 rupees and you're importing something worth 100 rupees. That's a problem. So this difference is the British profit. So this ultimately meant we Indians have to pay the British. Clear? And how did that payments happen? So there was gold in India. So the Britishers would take the gold as payments for this. Or there were certain other things that the Britishers were also interested in. For example, the spices. The Indian spices were much in demand around the world. So they would buy the spices from India. So let's assume they have to pay 60 rupee for the spices they have taken. And they were also interested in tea, coffee, especially tea and all, because this was very important for their triangular slave trade that we'll study in world history. So that's like 30 rupees. So this two adds to 90 rupees. So had this finished good imports not been there, they would have to give money to India, right? The 60 plus 30, 90 would have to be given to India. Now they started finding a better option. See, they could take all the raw materials from India, sell the finished goods to India, and as a result of which, they could compensate for the payments that could have been done. And still this amount was lower. If this, suppose this is 20, this all adds up to 90. So they have to pay India 90, we have to pay them 100. There is this 10 rupee difference. That 10 rupee difference they would take in the form of gold or silver, whatever it is. That's how the gold started transporting over here. And it is not as if India wanted this to happen. See, normally in today's world, if you see, there are nations which export raw materials, import finished goods. In today's world, it's a matter of choice. Because in certain products, you look at the Gulf nations. What's their major earnings? Crude oil exports. It's a raw material. They are happy exporting that raw material because they can make money out of it. This was not a choice, actually. Indians were never happy about it. But the Britishers created policies as a result of which India was forced into a system like this.